Welcome back to Peace Leader Training. We're on step 2. As the word for this we're talking about is mobilization. If you remember step 1, it's foundation. It's a healthy church that leads to healthy mission, leading to every person on mission. And then Acts 1:8, where we do peace, which is personal peace, local peace, and global peace. And now we're in step 2, which is mobilization. Once you're talking about our objective is every member on mission, the question is how? How do you do that? We're talking about how to examine the principles to help every member to live on mission, learn the mobilization process and challenges of a successful mission program, and then exposure to methods and tools to overcome challenges, understanding the change process. The goal is to cast a vision for 100% church mobilization into missions and to develop tools and methods to overcome the obstacles that get in the way for 100% mobilization. Here's some principles I want you to consider as you begin to lead your church into living on mission. First, ask the Lord of the harvest for more workers. Create a peace team, create a peace prayer team. In Matthew 9:37-38, you probably know this very well. Then he, Jesus, said to his disciples, "The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into his harvest field." Start there. The harvest is plentiful, the workers are few. He gives a solution, which is to go to him and ask. Now, I want you to be careful of this whole concept of asking God for something, because what I found in my life is when I go to the Father and ask him for more people, he usually stops and looks at me and says, "So Mike, what are you doing?" So be ready to answer the prayer first, because as a leader, people are going to say, "Well, how are you doing it? Can we come and see with you?" Second, accept your church members and attenders where they're at. Know and define your audience. Who's your audience? Who are you talking to? And then change everything that doesn't connect with your audience. In other words, there's a lot of things that have been done in the past often that don't work anymore. And so find out, as we talk to our audience, as we talk to the people that we're asking to live on mission, is the current communication connecting with them? If they're saying, "Yeah, that's a good idea, but it's not for me," it's not connecting for them. So get ready to change everything. We're going to talk about how to do that. Third, direct where you want to take your church members and attenders. What do you want your missions program to look like? What do you envision happening? What do you envision it looking like? And then clarify your vision, develop your strategy, identify your action steps. That's what's coming up next. Paint a new picture, help them accomplish their personal goals. People are motivated by meeting their own personal goals. What's going to benefit me? What's going to help me also see what God's called me to do? And then take missions into every area of your church, youth, men, women, singles. This is for every member on mission. And we have sometimes groupings within our church that are a little bit isolated from other parts. And so there's a chance to get to the leaders of those parts of the church, whether it's men's ministry or women's or children's or youth or singles, and say, "Hey, how can we serve you to help your members live on mission?" Fourth, infect your church members and attenders with a new vision. This is a chance to cast a new vision. There's something new happening. There's something exciting that we're going to be doing. There's something that you can be involved in. That's something that everyone can be involved in. And then the question is, how do you move your church members and attenders into a new vision? So we're going to get there. And in order to take your church members and attendees with you on this new exciting journey, bring in the fun factor. If they don't think that this is going to be enjoyable and pleasant and fun, they're not going to do it. If they think this is hard and difficult and strange and foreign and you got to eat bad food and live on planes and eat dust, it isn't going to work. And that's not what mission's about. It's not about where you're going. It's really about how you can care about other people. And you know what? It can be fun. One, it's fun by just going with your friends, going with others that you know. And secondly, when you're with people in the community, make it fun for them. They might be in pain or suffering, but you know what? They need to smile. They need to know somebody's hugging them, somebody they can enjoy that's coming, someone that might play a game with them. So make sure you don't leave out that fun factor. Fifth, connect all your activities and promotions together for your church members and attenders. Build communities around places and passions that are led by members. So we're about building communities of our members around places that they want to be involved in or passions they want to be involved in. Some have a passion for orphans, some have a passion for the poor, some have a passion for those who've been left behind in education, or those who've been trafficked, or maybe it's about domestic violence or child abuse. So we build communities around those. And then we say, we're not only members living on mission, but we're member-led mission. And that's critical because the more you can unleash your members to not just do, but lead, the further this is going to get. So we're going to talk about how to do that. So we at Saddleback, we have monthly meetings for our communities where they have food, fellowship, and fun. There's that fun factor again. We celebrate, we talk about what God's doing in the field, and we commission those who are going. So we do community, we do celebration, we do commissioning. That's part of our monthly gathering of people who say, this is my passion, and I want to hang with people that have a common passion. I want to be with them. I want to talk about what can we do, what's coming up, what can I be involved in, and then what are my ideas. And then finally, we conduct annual events for each place and passion. Every year, we have something for our passions and places individually to be able to promote what they're doing. So it might be that human trafficking, there's an annual event, the National Day of Awareness for Human Trafficking in the United States is always around January 11th. And so we find these national days. National HIV/AIDS Day is on December 1st. There's an Orphan Day. There's a Clean Water Day. There's also places. It might be the Independence Day for a country where people want to get together and celebrate. I know for us, it's always Chinese New Year's. We get a lot of people out that care about that part of the world. So those are just getting started in some mobilization principles. And then if you turn to the next page, we talk about a mobilization strategy. And the goal is to change the culture of your church by communicating the value of involvement in life-changing local and global activities. You actually want to change the culture of your church. That mission's no longer that strange thing for the select few, for the professionals, for the people that are paid to do it. You want it to be, it's something that involves a life change, something that is rewarding and exciting, and something that everyone can do. So what we do is we have a method for doing that. We create an intentional process for involvement, an intentional process. Just like step one in a healthy church has an intentional process for disciple making, there's an intentional process for mobilization. Do you realize there's a difference between recruiting and mobilizing? Recruiting is not a process. Recruiting is usually someone standing up in front of the church or putting something in front of people that says, this is what needs to get done. We want some of you to sign up. That's not mobilizing. Mobilization is an intentional process. Mobilization is about helping people discover what God's put on their heart. How can I help you discover what God's put on your heart? They're vastly different. And for your members, it feels very different because in recruiting, it feels very disconnected. It feels like, well, you don't really care about what I care about. You just need something done that you want done. Whereas in mobilization, they feel like you care about what I care about. You want to find out what God's put on my heart so I can pursue my passion. And those are radically different. So we say in point 2, understand the change process, that people need to move from apathy to advocate. People don't just wake up one day and just run out the door and say, I'm going to do mission now. It just doesn't happen that way. And we're going to start with where people are at. And some of them, honestly, are at a place where they don't really care. And it's not that their hearts are hard. It's just, I'm busy in life. I've got family. I've got work. I've got friends. I've got school. And I'm not thinking about it that much. And so they're just not active. That's what apathy is. Well, there's a change process to help people go from that with grace and patience to where they become passionate about something. And to do that, we use crawl steps to help our members find their mission passion. It's crawl steps, and we're going to look at what that is. And then we look for waves. Oftentimes, something happens. Let's say there's a huge disaster where people are greatly affected, and a lot of people say, I want to go and help. And it doesn't actually matter what the issue is, just helping them take those first steps is they go out and say, all I can do is go and hold somebody. I can help them clean out their house. I can help deliver food to them. A fire came through and destroyed things. And so we show up. And so when there's a wave, when something's created that a lot of people want to serve, take advantage of the waves and help people take those crawl steps. And we'll tell you what to do with that in just a second. Fifth, build on the power of personal story. I want you to know the best mobilizers in your church are your members. And I'm not the best mobilizer in Saddleback Church because I'm paid to do this. The best mobilizers are the ordinary people who are out doing it and talking about, God's put this on my heart. I've been able to do this. I've worked with orphans. I've seen orphans get placed in homes. I've worked with the poor. I've helped people get out of poverty. I'm working among people that have mental health issues. I'm helping people that are HIV positive to get the care they need. I'm helping people who have been left behind in education get the tutorial they need, to get the help they need, to get the resources they need. And so it's their personal story that helps people in your church think, I can do that. I've got a passion like that. I want to go take a crawl step with them. And then access the power of a church-wide program. Later on, as you've gotten started and you've got Peace Works going and you've got leaders for those Peace Works, it's time to do something called a campaign where you involve the whole church, where everybody gets to participate for a few weeks. They get messages on the weekend about it. They get work in their videos or something in their small groups. They're able to talk about it and say, what can my first steps be? And so it's a way to get the whole church getting started. And there's some powerful campaigns that we can help you with if your church is interested. But it's a way to move from the few that are getting started to getting everybody into their first crawl steps. That doesn't mean everybody's going to stay involved for a while, because if they don't find something they're passionate about in that first crawl step, they need to take a couple more crawl steps before they find that passion. So let's talk about what this process is. I call it the follow me process because it's what Jesus did. You know, when you want to find out how to do something well in mission, always go and look at Jesus. What did he do and say? In the foundation, he gave us the great commandments, the great commission. This is what we do. To have a biblical church, just follow what Jesus said. Well, to mobilize people, you know what he did was, if you look at John chapter 1, verse 43, Jesus was leaving for Galilee and he found Philip and he said, follow me. How hard is that? He just said, follow me. Now, the way that Philip saw that happen to him, it says in John chapter 1, verse 46, Philip was with Nathanael. Now, Nathanael was a skeptic who said, can anything good come out of Nazareth? And all that Philip said to the skeptic was, just come and see. How non-threatening is that? How easy is that? It doesn't take money. It doesn't take an education. It doesn't take all your time. You don't have to leave your occupation. You don't have to sell your home. You just have to go with them and show up. You don't even have to talk. And that's the best way for people to take their first step. It's called a crawl step. Come and see. It's a beautiful way that Jesus used to help people take those first crawl steps. Later on, you notice that he had a multitude that began to follow him. But over time, not all of them continued to walk with him. There were some that took a walk step. So they went from a crawl step to a walk step. They weren't yet the fully devoted followers of Christ, the disciples, the apostles, but they were still walking with him. And then, as you notice later on in Jesus' ministry, as he came toward the end of his time with his disciples, in Matthew 16:24, he said this. Jesus said to his disciples, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves, take up their cross, and follow me. Now, this was a big step. He was saying not only to come and walk with me, but to come and die. This was a sacrificial step he was asking them to take. Take up your cross and follow me. The cross represented death. You need to lay aside all the things that you think are important, all the things that you want to do, and say, yes, Lord, here am I, use me. So this is the change process that we use. I'm going to show this on the next page. But you need to understand the change process for people to be able to move. They're going to move from apathy to awareness, which is a crawl step, awareness to awakening, which is a walk step, from awakening to activation, that's an ongoing walk step, and from activation to advocate. Now, we have to create opportunities for these steps. They're not going to happen automatically. A crawl step is 0 preparation time, 1 to 4 hours of execution time, local or on the campus. or a walk step, 0 to 4 hours preparation time, 4 hours to 1 day execution time. And then run, 4 hours or more preparation time, 1 day or more execution time. So think strategically about the opportunities you're providing for your members. The most important ones are the crawl steps. Can you keep providing regular, multiple crawl steps? And here's what it looks like. It actually looks like a funnel. So if you think of the people that attend your church as being a huge pool of people that the majority of are not yet active. And that's okay. Again, you can look at them with grace and patience and say, they're just not moving yet. We call them apathetic. We'd never say that publicly, but they're just not moving yet. And that's okay. Actually, it's a wonderful challenge to think, they're not moving yet, so we get to help them take those steps. Now, by the way, most of our people, when we did a survey and we asked them, why is it that you're not ready to be involved? The answer came back, that's what you pay people to do. That in the peace plan, care for the sick, that's what you pay a healthcare worker to do. Educate the next generation, that's what you pay an educator to do. Plant churches, that's what you pay a church planter to do. So they just don't understand that this is something that they can do. So you're going to make this so simple and so attractive that they'll take the crawl steps. Now, once they take a crawl step, they're going to become aware. Now, in becoming aware, this is about what they're getting in their head. It's education. They're more aware of what's going on. Oh, there are homeless in our community. There are people that are left behind in education. They're all dropping out of school before they finish high school. They're not educated. Whatever it is, they're becoming aware of it in terms of intellectually. The crawl step gets them face-to-face with people that are in need. And when they're face-to-face with people in their need, oftentimes what God does is he breaks their heart. And you can see it in their faces. So many have come back to me and say, Pastor Mike, this is wrong. We have to do something about this. And they just start crying. Or some of them are even angry. And so we know that their heart's broken and that God has awakened their heart. Now, one thing I didn't know when we started the peace plan was how to get to the next step, because I thought if God broke their heart, they would stay involved. And when I noticed that many did not stay involved, I started studying this for about 1.5 to 2 years to figure out what's going on that they didn't stay involved. And here's what I discovered. It's something that we teach in our third base, our ministry base, serving in the church, is SHAPE. Spiritual gifts, heart passions, abilities, personalities, and experiences. That if they didn't identify their SHAPE, their particular passion, they wouldn't stay involved. For example, some people got involved in our project for feeding the homeless. And they came back to me and said, this is wrong, I've got to help. And I'd say, do you want to stay involved with the homeless? And they'd go, no. And I'd say, well, what do you want to stay involved with? And they'd say, well, domestic violence or child abuse, or it's for the incarcerated families. So then I had to begin to help them discover what their particular SHAPE was. And when they discovered that, they're like, that's it, that's what I want to keep doing. And they started taking their walk steps. And so we called the walk step getting to active, which is ongoing involvement. So they've moved from, I'm not involved, I'm not interested, to, oh, that's interesting, I will go with you one Saturday afternoon for an hour to meet an orphan or to meet a person who's homeless, or to, my heart's broken, I wonder what it's broken about. What's really broken about this family is homeless because a spouse is in prison, or somebody got sick and lost their job, and they have no income. And so that's what they said. That's my passion. I want to address that. And they stay active. Now they're walking. Now, before they take the next step, which is becoming an advocate, we usually try to watch them at that point. And this becomes critical for you as a leader in your church, is that before you say, oh, hey, do you want to be the leader of this, that you first watch them in their walk steps. So you let people continue to go back, and as you meet with them, you can say, hey, do more crawl steps with people so more people can come with you. Then you'll see whether they're able to lead other people, bring more people with them. And over time, you'll notice that some of them are good leaders and they're good gatherers. They can bring people with them. And that's when you can say, would you be willing to take the run step? Now, here's what I found. People that automatically say, before we even get started, Pastor Mike, I want to be the leader. I'm ready. Usually aren't the right people, because oftentimes they're the people that want to form a committee and tell other people what to do. So what I tell people who say, I want to be the leader is, I'm like, fantastic, that's great. Why don't you get started? Why don't you just kind of go out for an hour, meet the people, whether it's trafficking, why don't you find out about it, meet people, hear their story, and come back and see me. Now, some don't come back, but the ones that do, I ask them, did you take anybody with you? And if they didn't, I say, well, go back and do it again and take some people with you. And over time, I'll see whether they're serious about it, whether they're taking more people with them, and whether they're going to stick with it. More often than not, the people that I find become the leaders of these peace works are the people who just took simple crawl steps, found a passion, said, this is what I want to do, and kept doing it. You're leading this already. So all you need to do is get a couple other people to help you lead. If you're good at organizing, get people that are good at communication, get somebody good at prayer, get somebody good at events. Whatever you're good at, find others that are going to take other leadership roles so you have a leadership team. And that's then a group of people who are running, and they're as advocates of that particular passion. Again, whether it's poverty, it might be a place, a neighborhood, or another country. They're the ones that are taking people through the crawl steps, the walk steps, and even run steps into their leadership team. So that's the process of moving people from apathetic to aware to awakened to active to advocate. This shows you down below, shape-based mission mobilization, how this works for us. Now, before we get there, I want to read for you Ephesians chapter 2, verse 10, because it's a great picture of what God has done. It says in Ephesians 2:10, "For we are God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do." We are God's workmanship. We are His handiwork. We are uniquely carved out, prepared by Him for something very special. We're all unique. We're His workmanship. We're all unique. We all have a particular shape. And you know what it's for? It says in verse 10, we were created in this very specific, unique way to do good works, to do the things that God wants you to do, to go into the community for something I've prepared in advance for you. And so that's His promise, that there is a shape already there that we help people discover. And it shows you kind of what some of the spiritual gifts might look like, heart passions might look like, abilities might look like, personalities might look like, and experiences. So that's what it looks like to do shape-based mobilization. And then finally, we've got a list here of some of the peace works that we do at Saddleback, just as an example, that are mobilization by interest, cause, or passion. You notice some of them are asterisks. Those are signature issues that are so important to our church and become so big that we staff to them. But we do church health under equipped servant leaders, HIV and orphans under health, orphans and vulnerable children under poverty, church planting among unreached, and evangelism in general outreach, justice and trafficking we put under promote reconciliation, persecuted church under promote reconciliation, poverty and economic development under assist the poor, healthcare, clean water under health, and then finally education, which we do things like literacy, preschools for the poor that don't have an opportunity to be prepared before they go to school, and then English as a foreign language. And again, as I mentioned, some members have a passion for a place. They might have a particular neighborhood, a particular community, a particular city, and then others have a place in global peace that is their passion. It could be a country, maybe they came from there, they have a heart for it, or even people groups, a particular people group, especially people groups that don't have a church. So for each peace work that we have, establish a leadership team. Make sure that as you're going through the mobilization process, you want to have a leadership team. And around the leadership team, you want to build a core of people that this is their passion. They usually meet monthly, the leaders and the core. And then we grow a community for us. Monthly, they get together for about 2 hours, and we invite other people to just come and see even what that group's about. They're about prayer and inspiration and interaction and direction and mobilization, evaluation. That's what they do. Now, I want you to, before we wrap up the mobilization step, is to turn to a person next to you. And I want you to go back over the mobilization process. Just look at the funnel and have one person teach the other person the process using the A's and the crawl, walk, run steps, and the process to help somebody go from apathetic to advocate. Welcome back. We're on step 2, mobilizing members, and we're going to look at what you're going to do when you go back and get started in your church, mobilizing people. We call this the pilot phase. The reason why we first start with something that's less than the whole church is it gives you a chance to help some people get started, build some best practices, build some stories, and most of all, build some leaders so that when you go church-wide, you're able to sustain the members who not only take some crawl steps, but are ready to take walk steps. So let's look at this. The first thing, obviously, we talk about is build a prayer team. Again, that might sound simplistic, but it's real. And it's real because you need not only the spiritual covering, the battle for you, but also more and more people getting involved in praying. You'll be surprised at how many people, this is their passion. They want to pray. And when teams go out into the community, they want to go with them and kind of prayer walk the areas and help in that way. The next thing is you plan the pilot phase. When you send those first groups out on crawl steps, they're all going to be looking for a person of peace. Now, it's not the primary thing they have to start with because they might go out and say, let's prayer walk, let's start talking to people, whether they're working with widows, where they sit down, they want to hear their story, or orphans, find out the story of the orphans and their families, whether they're a homeless person or someone left behind in education. You're not necessarily saying, I've got to find the person of peace, but you're really building relationships. And in the relationships, God will usually show you that person that opens the door and says, welcome. They're the ones who make it possible for you to stay involved in that particular work. So find a person of peace that will come, and then you determine a location. Too many communities are so big that if you spread yourself out and say, we're going to do this in a huge area, it gets so diluted you really can't continue the work very well. So determine a location, whether it's a neighborhood or part of a town or part of a city, but determine the location. Next, select Peaceworks to pilot. What are the crawl steps that you're going to pilot? Oftentimes that's determined by people that you already have, that you know already interested in something. Somebody says, I'm interested in education, or I'm interested in healthcare, I'm interested in economic development for people that are poor, I'm interested in church planting or starting groups where the church isn't, or I'm interested in justice and trafficking. Find out people that are already interested. They don't have to necessarily already be doing something. There's someone who says, I will take people out on a crawl step. We'll go find out where these people are and sit down and hear their stories. Now, caution here is a lot of people are going to be trying to pull your church into their work. Now, we believe in something called the three-legged stool, where there's the church, there's the role of the government, there's the role of the private sector, whether it's business or organizations. And we like to partner with those. This is a difficult place to start partnership. So we usually say, be careful. You just have your people go straight out and start to meet people. So if they're getting information from a hospital, you're not asking them to serve in and through the hospital. If you're going out to do something in the school, not necessarily in and through the school. Or an organization says, come and see what we're doing with trafficked people, they can go do that, but it's not now serving through that organization. You just want them to go and meet people and discover. Next thing is when you cast a vision to the whole church, and you're still in the pilot phase, what we did was we asked for test pilots. Now, you know what test pilots are, right? They're people who aren't afraid to get started when they don't know what's going to happen. People say, well, here's something we want to do, and people raise their hand and say, I'm in. What are we going to do? Where are we going to go? They're not afraid of not knowing the answers or knowing what's going to happen. If something crashes, nobody gets hurt, but they're fine with that. What it does is it eliminates a lot of people who might in the beginning be skeptical or against what you're doing, and you're saying, we're just looking for a few people to get started with. It's not for everyone, and so you don't want to cast a vision yet for every person on mission. Everybody has to do this. That's not what this is for. You're looking for some early adopters, people that say, I'm in, I'm willing to try, let's see how it goes. Well, you create the crawl steps for people to easily get started. And then you can offer for people who are going to take a crawl step, and you have to have this planned out ahead of time, is that for those who say, this is something I want to continue to do, what's the walk step? That's why you need a leader for the crawl steps, somebody who's already doing something or involved in it as much as possible. They're ready to take people into a walk step. And we'll talk later on about what we call peace skills training for people that are at the walk step. Equip and deploy pilot teams. This is where we do the skills training. And then identify and develop members who will lead run steps. As I said, don't jump into this too fast. How do I know that? Because I did. I can give you lots of examples where I got too early, too fast, saying, hey, you'd be great for a leader. They weren't ready, or the timing wasn't right, or they needed to probably extract themselves from some other things before they could lead. And so be patient, but also don't be put off by people who say, oh, I can't lead, because oftentimes they're already leading and they just have a different picture of what leadership is. So you can help them discover that. And then communicate results and successes. If you can start to capture the stories, even of crawl steps, like what was it like for the person that went out and took their first crawl step and came back and went, that's incredible. I know God wants me involved in this. You want to capture that story. You can capture the story on video. And that's what the great thing about our phones today is you can capture those simple videos and play those later for people that don't believe that the peace plan is for them. You can also capture the stories of people that you've connected with. Now, you don't do that so early that they think that you're trying to use them or get their story to somehow promote that problem. But as you build a relationship with people in the community, some of them become your friends. You have such a relationship with them, you can say, you know what, would you mind telling your story so we can tell other people what God's doing? We can tell other people this is something we should be coming out and caring about in our community. And oftentimes they'll want to do that. So you want to capture the stories and then find ways to promote that. Now, we often early on would wait until we were ready for church-wide before we use some of those stories. Some can be used early on where people can show it in their small group, can show it in a ministry of a few people, but then we can also get them ready for a church-wide campaign. I know a lot of our initiatives, our Peace Works in the beginning, started Facebook pages. So there was Saddleback Human Trafficking Initiative. There was Saddleback Poverty, Saddleback Assist the Poor, Saddleback Care for the Sick. So when you have Facebook pages, there's some stories they can put up there and get more people liking and kind of being a part of a community for that. So this is the pilot phase. The pilot phase, again, is to get started, build that prayer base, go out and build relationships, have people get connected to people, and start their walk steps. At that point, they start peace skills training so they are more advanced in what they can do to help people. And in that, they build some best practices. And then after the best practices, you get more leaders, and then you start to get the stories that they can tell. Now, let's turn over to what happens when you've been in the pilot phase. And for us, when we started the Peace Plan, we went 18 months in a pilot phase. We piloted with 100 small groups is how we got started, was doing it with small groups. And we started with 100 small groups and went 18 months and prepared ourselves with leaders and other best practices and stories. And then we were ready to go church-wide. And here's what church-wide looks like. Keep your prayer base going and build your prayer base, because a whole lot more is coming. Okay, even if you're a smaller church, a church of 50 people from a rural community in Rwanda needs to build even more of a prayer base as well. Then you want to recast the vision church-wide. So in recasting the vision, it's time for the pastor to stand up and say, here's all the great things that members of our church have been involved in. Now we're ready for all of you to take a step into this. And so the pastor's recasting the vision. And they can start talking about some of the things that you can get involved in are these passions. So they're the things that people are already doing in the community. built around Peaceworks, and some are by places, different neighborhoods, different communities, different countries, different people groups. And then even in the church-wide phase, you want to continue to build the leadership base. This is going to work as long as you continue to raise up more members leading. It can't be built on a paid person that's leading it or one paid person and a few volunteers. It's really about, from the beginning, a vision of every member on mission and members leading mission. And so you have to commit to that ahead of time. And what it does is you as a leader for this in your church have to always have your eyes out for who's in their walk step that could potentially lead, or who's in the church that has a different passion, asking if they can do something that you're sending out on crawl steps, where you can get new initiatives from people who are getting started based on their passions. And then grow the leadership teams for the Peaceworks. Grow the leadership teams, not only the number of leadership teams, but the number in leadership teams. Again, one of the challenges we had when we got started was we were appointing one leader. And one leader's fine, but one leader is not gifted in everything. And also because they're volunteers, they don't have all the time for assimilating more and more people that are interested. And then you have a lot of people who change the seasons of life. They change jobs, have to move. Some of them might have a health problem and can't be involved. So as long as you have a leadership team, usually you have continuity. So build your leadership teams. So this is mobilization. This is step 2 in the process of helping your church to be on mission. Remember, step 1 is a foundation of healthy church, people getting healthy to where they want to live on mission. But then you have in step 2, the mobilization step of people who, even though they might understand it's time to live on mission, they're not doing anything yet. So you have that mobilization process of crawl, walk, run, taking people from apathetic to aware, to awakened, to active, to advocates, and running that process. As you set that up, recommendation is to start with the pilot phase. And from the pilot phase, as you build that and you know you're ready, you can go to your pastor and say, I think we're ready for a church-wide campaign to launch this church-wide. So what I want you to do right now is take some time with the group that you're together with, or even if it's just one other person, and I'd like for you to plan out your pilot phase. You don't have to know how long it's going to be, but you can look at these steps and say, okay, how are we going to build a prayer team? How are we going to do these different things? And then when you have that plan ready, we're going to be ready to come then to step 3, transformation.